Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire. We
got an incredible bit of audio leaked today of remarks made by the acting Secretary of the Navy, Thomas Modly. Now remember, this guy only has the job, he's the acting Secretary of the Navy, and he's only there because the previous Secretary of the Navy, you may recall, resigned quite publicly after clashing with the president over the president's pardoning of war criminals back in November. So the guy who replaced him, this acting secretary, apparently had no problem with the pardoning of war criminals, and so he got the job. Well, today, the acting secretary was on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Now, that, of course, is the aircraft carrier currently docked in Guam that has an outbreak of coronavirus. An outbreak that was essentially ignored by Navy higher-ups until the captain of that ship, Brett Crozier, risked his career to blow the whistle last week. Crozier was summarily relieved of his command for essentially insubordination and embarrassing the Navy and the president. But his entire ship made their support for his actions very clear as they cheered him off a few days ago, leaving the ship. The captain has since tested positive for coronavirus himself. Today, Acting Secretary Modly addressed the entire crew of that aircraft carrier in Guam. And listen what he had to say about Captain Crozier.
He didn't think that information was going to get out into the public in this information age that we live in, then he was A, too naive or too stupid to be the commanding officer of a ship like this.
What the?
The alternate is that he did it on purpose. And that's a serious violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which you are all familiar with.
By the way, that you did hear that correctly. That is a sailor on that ship reacting to those comments by saying, "What the F?" Now, the comments by the acting Navy Secretary have caused enormous blowback and controversy around the nation. I'm joined now by Democratic Congresswoman Elaine Luria of Virginia. She's a retired Navy commander herself. Today, she called on the Secretary of Defense to fire the acting Secretary of the Navy for making those comments today. Congresswoman, what so disturbed you about those comments that you would call for him to be fired?
Well, early this morning, when I first saw these out in social media, my husband showed them to me, and I thought, you gotta be kidding me. I thought this was literally something from The Onion, that the acting Secretary of the Navy could not have possibly flown halfway around the world to visit the aircraft carrier, speak over the 1MC, that's the announcing system on the ship, and berate the man that he has just fired. And we have seen the way in which the crew much loved Captain Crozier, and in a very difficult time going through a pandemic and where the crew is much at risk, he put himself out on the line to make sure that the crew got what they needed to stay safe. And the Secretary of the Navy flying forward to do that has so many far-reaching effects. Not only on the crew of the Theodore Roosevelt, but I have heard from dozens of my former colleagues. So the people that I served with, graduated from the Naval Academy with, and when I was in command, they're now going to their second and third sequential commands, just much like Captain Crozier. And I'm hearing from those people that loyalty goes up and down the chain of command, and they are questioning why should they go out there? Why should they go out there and be in these roles of leadership when the leaders at the top are not going to be behind them when they have to make these tough decisions?
You just noted something that it's worth just sort of pointing out to people, which is that the acting Secretary of the Navy flew, in the midst of a pandemic, flew 8,000 miles to the ship in Guam to deliver this message in person, which itself is just sort of a shocking and stunning action given everything that's going on.
You're correct. It is shocking, and Guam is not an easy place to get to, and this took up a considerable amount of his time to go there and in person make these disparaging remarks of the captain of the ship, who was much beloved and put himself out there for this crew. And I'm not here to defend, the way in which the letter was sent out and those actions, but we're beyond that at this point. And, that crew needs reassuring words from their leadership at the top of the Navy all the way down to the next commanding officer that will serve there and take Captain Crozier's place. And I can tell you from my own experience, any new commanding officer coming into a ship, it's hard to come in behind someone and pick up and build that trust and confidence of the crew. And the crew of the Theodore Roosevelt, it's going to be difficult for that next commanding officer to come in behind him, and it's going to be difficult for all those officers who are in these roles of responsibility to trust the chain of command to have their back when they have to make tough decisions.
The president today said that the letter was bad because it showed weakness, and we don't like weakness. And the acting secretary said to David Ignatius this: I didn't want to get into a decision where the president would feel that he had to intervene because the Navy couldn't be decisive. If I were president and I saw a commanding officer of a ship exercising such poor judgment, I would be asking why the leadership of the Navy wasn't taking action itself. Of course, the president today now vowing to get involved. What do you make of that he was essentially trying to stop the president from doing something?
Well, I saw that reporting as well. And I think it's very ironic because all of the things that in his interview that Secretary Modly pointed out were weaknesses in Captain Crozier's action, I think were actually taken to the next level by the Secretary himself by flying halfway around the world and then making these, disparaging and ridiculous remarks from anyone in a position of leadership such as his. The whole Navy looks to the Secretary of the Navy for guidance and leadership, and that was not displayed today. And he was pretty naive himself to think that was not going to be distributed widely and quickly because, going over the 1MC to thousands of sailors, it didn't take very long for the full recording of that announcement to go out.
Final question. A colleague of yours, Congressman Gallego, in an interview with the Times, pointed out something else just in terms about discipline and the sort of application of it in these different circumstances. There were two Navy destroyers that had fatal accidents in 2017, the John McCain and the Fitzgerald, that killed 17 Americans. And those firings of those captains came after months of investigations. There was some due process there about getting to the bottom of what happened here, and then they were both, I think, relieved of command, whereas this was a matter of days.
That is true, and there was an ongoing investigation. I believe that the CNO, the Chief of Naval Operations, indicated that an investigation surrounding these circumstances would come out today. And I have yet to see that, and I do believe that a further look into the circumstances surrounding the support to the crew of the Theodore Roosevelt is very important. But I think the main focus has got to be right now. We've got to have leadership from the top to the bottom, supporting our commanding officers out there and helping fight this pandemic and make sure that their crews and their sailors stay safe and stay healthy and can return to doing the mission that they're doing. Because we can't overlook that the reason the Theodore Roosevelt is in the Western Pacific and is currently in Guam is, that we have near-peer competitors in China and Russia, and our continued presence, and specifically our aircraft carrier presence in the Western Pacific, is incredibly important for our national defense. And we need to make sure that they stay safe, stay healthy, and we can get the ship back online to doing the job that it is there to do.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of April of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small, scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. And of course, we roast the corn in their husks after soaking them for quite a while in a lime water bath. Lime juice and water. Quite a bit of limes, by the way. Throw everything in there. When you squeeze the lime, throw it in. Just let it soak in there for a while. It's nice. Well, what's up with Trump's campaign speeches disguised as these pandemic pressers? I'm getting a little tired of them. It's free airtime. He doesn't have to pay. Everybody else has to pay. Oh my God. And but apparently he doesn't have to pay because as the President of the United States, anything he does, lie, cheat, bribe, murder, or just manslaughter, to get elected is okay because Bill Barr has an OLC memo that states it as such. Speaking of which, what's up with Wisconsin? And what's up with John Balls and Strikes Roberts, who never calls a foul ball on the home team? Well, it looks like they're voting in Wisconsin. They're trying to keep their 6-foot zone of safety in place while people are waiting in line at about a half dozen polling places in Wisconsin. I exaggerate, I know. There's probably only 4. Well, those long lines at the few polling places in Wisconsin are going to be closed early because what else do you think the GOP is going to do to suppress the vote? Man, people didn't even get their absentee ballots when they requested them within the time frame because the GOP held it up. And then they stacked their courts in Wisconsin. And we have a stacked court at SCOTUS, too. Apparently, it was Kavanaugh who led the conservative majority. They don't want democracy. Just remember now, both Gorsuch and Kavanaugh were working with GW. They were Brooks Brother rioters. Where's our Brooks Brother rioters when we need them? Where? Well, those two were there. They were the Brooks Brother rioters. Yeah, they've been working to suppress the vote forever. Just think of it. The intellectual heft of a Ruth Bader Ginsburg matched against both Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Please. Oh, God. God help us, please. No, we're stuck. We have a separation of church and state, and God would probably say, hey, it's not my concern. I've got enough to deal with this weird expanding universe. It's going to turn into an ice cube if I'm not careful. So, our petty little concerns have really no truck with God as far as I can tell. It's up to us. That's why we were given volition. So, what the hell is going to happen in November? Wisconsin, I pretty much think is precedent for the rest of the electoral season, if you want my drift in it. And it's not only mine. Yep, it will be the template. They've been working so damn hard. And the Kochs right now, what's left of the two brothers because one's dead, are rubbing their hands together in glee. Oh, we're finally achieving that which we wanted. And a pandemic to get rid of all the useless eaters. They are a cult of evil. And that is not an exaggeration. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? There's so much news out there, we had to pretty much, synthesize it down and give you, a curated show. And that's what we do here in the salon. At the top, of course, in the wake of the leaked audio, more elected officials and former naval commanders, sometimes they're both elected officials and former naval commanders, are calling for the firing of the acting Secretary of the Navy. Remember that. They're only acting. Okay? And we'll see. It looked like Trump was caught in a corner at the presser yesterday when pressed. So he's got to look into it because it looks like the captain, the commander, was quite a good guy. He had he just had a bad day. I don't know why he was sending letters, because that's what you do, you stoop. You send letters to the command, and he did. He sent so many letters, he knew they're going to get leaked. Well, listen, there's a pandemic going on, and you didn't do diddly, and all you did was diddle. There, I got that out. On the rest of the menu, not even the pandemic is stopping the EPA from pushing forward with a rule to block scientific studies on air and water pollution, because they don't want science in policy making. They want a feeling, and the feeling is a lot of cash in their pocket. Trump attacked his own government's report on the shortage of COVID-19 tests because it was prepared by an inspector general. Who ever heard of that? And a Washington state nonprofit sued Fox News and Murdoch over coronavirus misinformation. Well, it's about damn time. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Ontario is angry over the unacceptable U.S. move to block the export of 3 million masks it bought to fight its coronavirus outbreak. We are pirates. We're even stealing 40 ventilators from Barbados. We're not exporting the ventilators there. They were coming to Barbados, and we're stealing them. We're pirates. And the Singapore government proposed a law to ensure safe elections during the pandemic. Singapore! They cane you for spitting in the street. Singapore is looking for safe elections. But we can't. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, of course, is our chat room link right there by the social media scroll. Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room for us, and thank you, Kelly. And of course, she does so much more too. So thank you for all of that, Kelly. If you would then take a look to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our link to our Patreon site. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, even in these perilous times, even more so, unfortunately, if you're able to maybe afford a espresso-type coffee drink once a month, then send those proceeds our way. It really does help us pay our bills. And, of course, since we've been broadcasting for 9 years now of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio, it wears out the machines, and we have to purchase newish machinery and the software that they don't just usually bundle it. You got to kind of buy that stuff, especially since we're broadcasting and our software is fairly specific. But we would be unable to do this without your help, and I want to express great gratitude for those of you who have been continuing to send recurring contributions our way, and new folks who have logged on and sending us some money as well. And I will get to the bumper stickers and whatnot that you may say that you'd like in the snail mail. A lot of stuff going on here, not only keeping the radio station going here while we're, well, hunkered down, but real-life family stuff, too. So it's been a bit, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but it's been whelming. Whew, geez, as we all know. Okay, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that posted up on social media, except for Facebook, because I'm still locked down. I think maybe I have like a week left. Maybe, I don't know. Is it 8 days, 6 days, 7 days? Somewhere on there. I have to look. But I hate Facebook. You know, Zuckerberg's going to sponsor the Republican National Convention, which means Trump's coronation at the convention. That's what that means. What's Zuckerberg up to? We know exactly what Zuckerberg is up to. I mean, he's working with Pascal? I don't know. He's a goon. Anyway, Facebook sucks, and we all know that. And for now, I don't get to post on Facebook because of political speech about Donald Trump that they don't like. Don't call him a Vichy collaborating mofo. Apparently, that's bullying. Apparently. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Okay. Well, are you wearing masks? We all should be wearing masks when we go out. I received a couple of masks from a friend. Thank you, Marina. Listener and a friend in real life, too. She and her husband sent us a couple of masks, and I'm going to wear them because Mom already has her like N95 medical masks because of her attendant problems with autoimmune suppression because of her age and the medications she takes, and for her CPOD or COPD. And so she's got the medical mask that she's required for her condition. I have an N95 mask that I had not worn since the fires last year, and we didn't have as bad a fire, so really I was wearing a particle mask that a sheetrock dust guy would wear. And when I say sheetrock dust guy, it's not just putting up sheetrock. It's breathing and living in sheetrock dust. You don't put up sheetrock dust, you put up sheetrock, but you get sheetrock dust. Anyway, I wore particle masks mostly, but I do have an N95 if I need it. But thank you, Marina, for the masks. They work perfectly, and they look great, too. Okay. Well, we better dive in right now into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it comes out of the American Independent by Dan Desai Martin. The Environmental Protection Agency is continuing to move forward with a rule that will make it harder for high-quality scientific studies to be used in policymaking, even as the coronavirus pandemic engulfing the country, I would say the world, makes it more difficult for healthcare professionals to comment on the rule before it is finalized. In fact, as an ancillary to this, hospitals are threatening termination for any medical personnel who may make public, talk to the press, talk to each other about shortages of medical equipment and supplies during the pandemic. Now, I want to know, hospitals, do you really think you can afford to start laying off people for really exercising their First Amendment rights? I know you're a business, but maybe we ought to nationalize the whole thing now, and we don't give up our constitutional rights. We don't. Interesting. They don't want the truth, and they don't want science, because it might get in the way of making money. Look how Fauci is being suppressed. I know. We all suspected that Trump has some sort of financial stake in this drug that he's been pushing, like a pusher. And we all consider that maybe it's just a way to deflect from the fact that he effed up big time, and he needs a quick cure, a magic bullet. And this could be it. But Trump doesn't do anything unless he's getting some kind of monetary gain. That's how he works. Now, this rule, first introduced in 2018 and known formally as Strengthening Transparency in Regulatory Science, see what they do, would require scientists to hand over the raw data underlying studies before the EPA would consider them. A slight revision of the rule announced in March stated that the agency would give preferences to studies for which researchers hand over all the raw data. However, many of the data used in carrying out scientific studies contain confidential medical records that could identify individuals who participated, and scientists are unable to release that data due to confidentiality agreements, and that's exactly why the EPA, the Trump administration et al., are using this gambit. They will use the administrative laws that keep the ship of state afloat against us to capsize the ship of state. Why? Just to make money? I think there's something else going on here. Power? Is that it? Is that all it is? The rule could be applied retroactively, limiting the use of previous research, such as the landmark 1993 study that linked air pollution to health outcomes. I guess we're going to get lead back in our paint now. We're getting it in our water. The effort caps more than 3 years of efforts to dilute scientific research, especially on climate change and air pollution, which has underpinned rules that the fossil fuel industry calls burdensome. Public officials and health experts have requested that the EPA allow more time for public input as the coronavirus outbreak rages on. But the EPA doesn't care. Last week, the EPA announced it would allow just one additional month for the public to submit comments on the rule, making the new deadline May 18th. In the announcement, Wheeler said that the EPA is committed to giving the public ample time to participate in the rulemaking process. Scientists slammed the decision. 30 extra days is grossly inadequate to allow impacted communities and public health professionals to provide feedback. Michael Halpern, Deputy Director for the Center for Science and Democracy, wrote, Halpern noted that many of the scientists and scientific and community organizations most affected by the proposal will continue to be on the front lines of coronavirus response through May. Despite the pandemic, the EPA shows no signs of changing its rules-making processes. Joy Gray of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Donald Trump is attacking a report that found hospitals around the country are unable to keep up with COVID-19 testing demands and are experiencing severe shortages. The Office of Inspector General at the Department of Health and Human Services conducted phone interviews with administrators from 323 hospitals across 46 states to prepare its report. Asked about the report's findings at his daily coronavirus press briefing, you know the campaign speech, Trump immediately launched into an attack on the report because it was prepared by an inspector general, because everything is transactional with this guy. This guy thinks that everybody has a game to play because he has a game to play in everything he does. It's just wrong, Trump said of the report's findings on testing shortages. Did I hear the words, Inspector General? Really? It's wrong. They'll talk to you about it. It's wrong. When the report noted when the reporter noted that the report came from Trump's own government, Trump repeatedly demanded to know the Inspector General's name. "Give me the name of the Inspector General," Trump said. Could politics be entered into that? Everything's transactional. He doesn't believe in bipartisanship because he has no ability to be objective. He wants his VIG. Last Friday, Trump fired another Inspector General, Michael Atkinson, who had served as Inspector General of the intelligence community and had notified Congress of the anonymous report detailing Trump's pressure on Ukraine that led to his impeachment. Over the weekend, Trump called Atkinson a disgrace to IGs. Later in the Monday briefing, ABC reporter John Carl did provide the Inspector General's name, Christy A. Grimm. Trump then demanded to know when she was appointed. Told that she was appointed earlier this year, Trump was demanded further information about how long she had served in government. When Carl confirmed that Grimm had served in the previous administration, Trump launched into a lengthy attack on Carl, calling him a third-rate reporter for not stating that Grimm had served in the Obama administration. Well, she not only served in the Obama administration, she served in various roles in federal government for more than 2 decades under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. She was appointed to government in 1999 with the incoming Bush administration. So I guess that doesn't count either, does it? Because she still served with a black guy. And anybody who served with a black guy has to get tested and has to get a vaccine. Trump never addressed the substance of the Inspector General's report about the shortage of testing around the country because he's still trying to get his big. Here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes through Crooks and Liars by Newshound Ellen, who works and is at Newshounds. Fox News' misinformation about coronavirus has come back to haunt it via a lawsuit that specifically cites Sean Hannity and Trish Reagan's attempts to downplay the pandemic as willfully and maliciously disseminating misinformation that represents unfair and deceptive trade practices. Last week, Vanity Fair special correspondent Gabriel Sherman reported that Fox News is worried that its misleading coverage of coronavirus pandemic could expose the network to lawsuits. A few days later, Law and Crime's Aaron Keller wrote an in-depth legal analysis, stating that while such a lawsuit would be neither an easy nor likely successful task, he did not rule out that the possibility could be very creative and a diligent lawyer could prevail. Now we are about to find out. From the legal complaint filed by the Washington League for Increased Transparency and Ethics, they said February and March of 2020 at various times that will be shown, including the March 9th, 2020 broadcasts of Hannity and Reagan, defendants acted in bad faith to willfully and maliciously disseminate false information denying and minimizing the danger posed by the spread of the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19, which is now recognized as an international pandemic. That's why it's a pandemic. It's international. This misinformation was disseminated to further defendants' business plans and to sell advertising by creating controversy through the dissemination of false information regardless of the reasonably foreseeable adverse effects such information would have upon the American public and public health and safety. And it goes on. Now, Newshounds has written a lot about Fox's coronavirus misinformation, including from both Hannity and Reagan. But personally, Newshound Ellen thinks Fox's Dr. Mark Siegel downplaying the hoax was the worst. He said about COVID-19, on the March 8th Fox and Friends worst-case scenario, it could be the flu, and agreed with host Pete Hegseth that the more you know, the less there is to worry about. Well, Siegel's now slamming unpreparedness for the pandemic, but giving himself and Donald Trump a pass. Now, Siegel is also a professor of medicine at NYU Langone, but she digresses. Now, as you would expect, Murdoch and Fox are threatening an aggressive response, including seeking sanctions. That is, a financial penalty from the plaintiffs. The conservative outlet fired back in a statement provided to the Daily Beast and attributed to Lily Fu Claffey, Fox News Media's general counsel, that the lawsuit was wrong on the facts, frivolous on the law. She said, "We will defend vigorously and seek sanctions as appropriate." But Fox may have met its match. The Washlight board member, the group that brought this lawsuit, Arthur West, a non-lawyer and former automobile mechanic who earns what he describes as a handsome living as a professional public interest plaintiff, told the Daily Beast that he's not impressed by Claffey's vow to seek retribution. "We're not afraid of the big bad Fox," he said. As for possible sanctions against him and his group, I'm pretty sure they'll try something like that because that's what bullies do, West said. Stay tuned. All right, let's get on with our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Wade Gibbs. The COVID-19 pandemic has a lot of people stuck at home with their cats, which raises some obvious questions. Can cats catch the new coronavirus from their owners? Can cats spread the disease to each other? And can people get infected by their cats? Scientists have been so busy studying human-to-human transmission of the virus that few so far have looked at how it may be able to spread among cats and the humans they live with. But a few preliminary reports within the past few days suggest that cats can catch COVID-19, probably from humans, and then give it to other cats. On April 5th, the Bronx Zoo announced that 4 tigers and 3 lions have developed symptoms of the disease. Scientists at Cornell University and the USDA tested samples from one of the tigers and confirmed that it was infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And researchers at the University of Illinois looked at the samples and found that the virus in the tiger was genetically indistinguishable from strains seen in humans. So the tiger must have caught this from a zookeeper, which is a little surprising. I mean, I would think 6 feet would be a minimum safe distance from a tiger under any circumstance. But perhaps someone coughed on her food. COVID-19 doesn't seem to be limited to big cats either. 2 research groups in China recently published studies on house cats in Wuhan and young cats raised in a lab. These preprints have not yet been peer-reviewed, and this is very early science that may well change with further study. That said, their findings are worrisome. The Wuhan study did blood tests on 102 cats there to see whether they had antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, which would mean that they had been infected with the virus at some point. 15% of the cats tested positive. 3 of those had been living with people who were diagnosed with COVID-19. The rest of the cats were strays or had been in pet hospitals. The authors write that immediate action should be implemented to keep a suitable distance between humans and companion animals such as cats, and strict hygiene and quarantine measures should also be carried out for these animals. In a second study, scientists at a high-containment lab for animal diseases control in Harbin, China, deliberately squirted coronavirus into the noses of cats and other kinds of animals to see whether they became infected. In some good news, they did not see the virus taking hold in dogs, pigs, chickens, or ducks, but it did replicate rapidly in the respiratory tracts of both cats and ferrets. Within a few days after infection, all of the cats they inoculated started shedding virus in their feces. The researchers placed an uninfected cat in a cage adjacent to each infected one. 1/3 of those healthy cats then caught the virus from their sick neighbors. So far, the CDC says, there's no evidence that people can catch COVID-19 from their cats. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So until it's clearer whether the virus can leap back from cats to their owners, it would seem smart to keep your cats indoors, to wear gloves and a mask when changing the litter box, and to avoid kissing or rubbing noses with your little schnookums. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Wade Gibbs.
Sweetie, want some fruit? You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. And if you tried to make a telephone call that day, you might have been out of luck. During that time, telephone calls were connected by operators. 95% of the operators were women. The National Federation of Telephone Workers called for a strike against AT&T. The strike was one of the largest work actions by a majority female workforce in U.S. history. More than 300,000 women took off their headsets and walked off the job. Telephone service disruptions were widespread. According to the New York Times, the demands of the workers included a $12 per week raise. The union wanted to negotiate a nationwide wage scale. The workers also wanted a guaranteed pension minimum and more vacation time. The slogan for the strike was, "The voice with a smile is gone for a while." A while turned out to be a month. As the strike wore on, newspapers decried interruptions to the telephone service. The day after the strike began, the New York Times editorial wondered, quote, whether essential public services should be subject to interruption by work stoppages growing out of labor disputes. In the end, the union did not win a national wage scale, and the wages continued to be settled at the local level. The next year, the National Federation of Telephone Workers had reorganized to form the Communication Workers of America as part of the CIO. Although the strike was largely not successful, it showed the potential power of women in the workforce.
Operator, but could you help me place this call? 'Cause I can't read the number that you just gave me.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The U.S. coronavirus death toll reached 10,000 on Monday, hitting 10,993 as Trump administration officials warned the nation was heading into what will be a very painful week. The total number of cases in the United States rose to 368,449. New York remained the epicenter of the outbreak in the U.S., but Governor Andrew Cuomo said the state could be seeing a flattening of the curve as the daily death count remained below Saturday's figure for the second straight day. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said that with hundreds still dying every day, the city might have to hold temporary burials in a park for some victims as funeral homes are overwhelmed, then remove them to be buried elsewhere after the crisis ends. Donald Trump on Monday agreed to allow treatment of coronavirus patients on the Navy hospital ship Comfort docked in New York City. The 1,000-bed ship was sent to the city to help ease the burden of local hospitals overwhelmed with COVID-19 patients, but it was supposed to treat patients seeking other types of care. Governor Andrew Cuomo, however, asked Trump to make the change. As of Saturday, the Comfort had only seen 27 patients. Over in the UK, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was transferred to intensive care on Monday. Johnson was diagnosed 10 days ago, becoming the first world leader to test positive for the virus. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab was designated as his replacement. Johnson's rapid decline took the nation by surprise as it came hours after he tweeted thanks to the National Health Service and said he was in good spirits. Tuesday's primary election in Wisconsin was the only such scheduled contest this month that hadn't already been postponed due to the coronavirus, though not for lack of trying by the Democrats. On Monday, the Wisconsin Supreme Court overruled Governor Tony Evers' last-minute order to stop in-person voting. Evers had called for pushing the balloting back to June 9th, saying that in-person balloting would endanger voters and poll workers. But the state Supreme Court, in a 4-2 ruling split along ideological lines, with Justice Daniel Kelly, up for re-election on this ballot abstaining, sided with Republicans, who controlled the state legislature, and challenged Evers' order. Evers also wanted to reopen the period for requesting absentee ballots, which ended on Friday. An hour later, the U.S. Supreme Court weighed in, ruling 5-4 that Wisconsin voters must hand-deliver their absentee ballots by Tuesday evening or have them postmarked by April 7th, overruling a lower court that had extended absentee voting for 6 days. In her dissent, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg excoriated her conservative colleagues, saying the decision means that voters will have to risk their health, quote, or they will lose their right to vote. This is not over and will not end well. Stay tuned. The aftershocks of the story about Captain Brett Crozier continue to rattle. Crozier is the now former commander of the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt, who was removed from his post for criticizing his superiors for not reacting adequately in response to a coronavirus outbreak on board. On Monday, the acting Secretary of the Navy, Thomas Modly, the man who fired Crozier in the first place, saying he had exercised poor judgment by sending a scathing email to his superiors, went to the ship and over the PA system delivered what was described as an unhinged speech to the crew aboard. Less than 2 minutes into his rant, he began bad-mouthing Captain Crozier, and the angry response from the sailors on board also commenced, warning of foul language ahead.
On Sunday night, he sent that email, and that email went out to a broad audience of people. I know that I've mentioned that it was over 20 We believe it was forwarded to even far more than that. And immediately it was picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle, which published sensitive information about the material condition of a naval warship. It was my opinion that if he didn't think that information was going to get out into the public in this information age that we live in, then he was A, too naive or too stupid to be the commanding officer of a ship like this. What the fuck? The alternate is that he did it on purpose. And that's a serious violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Just a few hours later, after saying he stood by every word of his speech, Modley offered an apology in a statement that read in part, "I want to apologize to the Navy for my recent comments to the crew of the Theodore Roosevelt. Let me be clear. I do not think Captain Brett Crozier is naive or stupid. I think and always believed him to be the opposite. I believe, precisely because he is not naive and stupid, that he sent his alarming email with the intention of getting it into the public domain in an effort to draw public attention to the situation on his ship. I apologize for any confusion this choice of words may have caused. Maybe the acting Secretary of the Navy needs to go home as well." And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. While you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the upper 60s, maybe bumping 70. Though tomorrow we're going to go up into the mid-70s, maybe the low to mid-70s. Overnight lows will be in the mid to low 40s. Winds will be out of the north today at 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing overnight. Sunny skies will give way, morning clouds will give way to afternoon sunshine today. Clear skies tonight. Sunny skies tomorrow. Once again, high of around 76 tomorrow. And winds will be out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County here in Southern Oregon stands now at 39, up from 33 from the weekend. And I suspect that this number is a little bit behind. But currently nobody has died in this county yet. And it is such a terrible disease. It's hard. So hopefully people will prevail through it. And our numbers don't go any more higher, but we know they will. Grass pollen is considered to be moderate, and air quality index in the region is good at 22 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is high at 6. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.15 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 66 and sunny, and their Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was moved to the ICU, and that does not sound good. We all have our issues with Boris Johnson, but this is an insidious, painful, agonizing disease. No one should have to suffer it. No one. Paris is 73 and sunny with word that they're going to be locking down the country pretty much. You know, you can't go out on the street without showing a note for why you were there. And, so they're 73 and sunny. Rome is 69 and sunny with coronavirus. Kyiv is 64 and fair, and we'll never know how much coronavirus because Vlad has a hand in what's going on. Hong Kong is 64 and mostly cloudy. Maybe they have a flattening of the curve. Tokyo is 52 and clear with lots of coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 61 with a light rain and coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 44 and fair with coronavirus. And New York is 58 degrees and fair. Stay inside. You have coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. David Lundgren of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ontario, the most populous province in Canada, complained to the United States that they had blocked the export of more than 3 million face masks it bought to fight the coronavirus outbreak, while Ottawa said it was pressuring Washington to release the gear. The province bought 2 orders of almost 4 million medical masks from manufacturer 3M in a plant in South Dakota, and 1 batch of nearly 3 million was halted. Premier Doug Ford told reporters. And speaking to Global News, he called the incident absolutely unacceptable. Ford, a populist conservative, said that after the Ontario and Canadian governments complained, he had been assured 500,000 of the masks would soon be released. Trump signed an order last week to stop personal protective equipment from being exported, and Ford said it was absolutely critical that Canada be exempted. Ford said he would be calling U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer to press home the point. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke to Canadian Foreign Minister François-Philippe Champagne and reiterated the U.S. desire to work with Canada to ensure the viability of international supply chains for medical supplies and personnel, but allies have complained about what they call the United States Wild West tactics of outbidding or blocking shipments to buyers who have already signed deals for medical equipment. Or how about outright stealing from the Barbados on the high seas before their ventilators were even delivered?
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Singapore government tabled a bill in Parliament that sought to ensure that a general election could be held safely if called during the pandemic. The city-state, which entered the first day of a month-long partial lockdown on Tuesday to try and curb the sharply rising coronavirus cases, had said it is not ruling out holding the ballot before its deadline in early 2021. Some opposition parties said holding any vote during the outbreak would be a health risk. The elections department said the temporary arrangement would ensure the safety of voters, candidates, and election officials should the next general election take place amid the COVID-19 situation. Among other provisions, the bill would allow citizens who are under movement restrictions due to the outbreak to cast their vote from designated facilities to which they may have been confined. Singapore, they cane you for chewing gum, but they're going to make sure their elections are safe. Why can't we? Alrighty, well, we are at the end of our broadcast period, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.